Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about trust on the spiritual path, what it really means, how to develop it, and how to gauge kind of where you are. I know for me this has been an ongoing thing that I've had to really learn through pain and suffering and going through the lows of a spiritual awakening. I know it's not something that comes naturally for so many of us that have been called to this path, whether it's through a kundalini awakening or really any type of spiritual awakening where you wake up to the truth. I know that when we first start going through it, trust is the last thing on our mind. We're so consumed with, I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like I've lost something. I want it back. I don't want to do that. I don't know what's going on with me. I mean, for me, I wasn't even aware I was on the spiritual path until I was like 5 months into a dark night of the soul. So, and I'm sure a lot of you might have similar circumstances where you maybe didn't have a spiritual background. Maybe you had no interest in spirituality, or even you didn't maybe even care what the truth was. But all of a sudden, forces greater than you came into your life and swept you up on this path, whether once you're on the path, you're on it, whether you like it or not. I think Adyashanti has some kind of, I'm going to paraphrase, but at first you start chasing the divine, and then at a certain point the divine starts chasing you. And I would say for anyone watching this, that's probably the path you're on, where your number has been called and you're being pulled on this path. And I mean, whether you trust or not, you're going to the same place. The trust is going to make the ride a lot smoother, maybe a lot more, it's hard to say enjoyable. It's not that enjoyable, especially it gets more enjoyable every day, but I'm trying to talk about when it's first starting and it's just, you're in a hell realm, you don't really know how you got there, you don't think you're gonna get out, you seem buried, you didn't know you could go solo, When we're in those times, trusting what's happening, it seems almost impossible and like some crazy idea. But that's when it's most needed, really. The trust, when you're able to trust, you're able to surrender. And when you're able to surrender to the divine, to the energy coming either down through you or the kundalini coming up, that's when the process gets a lot easier, because the process really can move through you in a more swift and painless way the more relaxed you are. So the more trust you have, the more you're going to surrender, and the more you surrender, the more relaxed you're going to be. And then of course the more relaxed you're going to be, the faster the process is going to go, the more you're going to allow the rewiring of for me it was just a major rewiring of my mind at first, and then of course your whole cellular structure is going to change. Pretty much everything is going to change, and you only lose the parts that weren't true. Anything innocent, anything true, that all stays. So I know at first for me it was really hard because I always really was dependent on my intellect. It was kind of like the cornerstone of my identity in a way. I was always a voracious reader. I loved games like poker. I was really into solving things. I was really left brain oriented prior to my kundalini awakening. But when mine started happening, I had a complete and utter neurological breakdown. It was to the point where I couldn't read. I had trouble like talking a lot of the time. I used to be able to think before I spoke, and it got to the point where I literally couldn't process thoughts because my neurological The nervous system was just completely breaking down, only to be rebuilt, of course. But I didn't know this at the time, so it was really freaky. So like, it was just breaking down. I couldn't do any of the activities I used to be able to do. I thought I had a neurological condition for the longest time. I went to the neurologist. I went to all kinds of doctors. Ran the gamut of Western medicine, and of course, everything kept coming back. Everything's fine. Nothing's wrong. Which, was hard to hear. At a certain point, I remember being so desperate. I just wanted to know what was wrong with me, right? Because I hadn't seen the light at the tunnel. I didn't know what I was going through yet. I didn't understand the process of breaking things down so that it can rebuild in a more right brain, connected, intuitive way. I didn't have any of that understanding. I just knew I couldn't really think like I used to be able to. And I wasn't myself, and I felt just so low and so helpless. So the thing that really shifted my perception of what was happening was finally letting go and surrendering, and not putting expectations on how things needed to be anymore. Because when we put expectations on how things need to be, then we get caught up in needing a certain outcome. When we need a certain outcome, we're always going to set ourselves up, for a situation that's going to be challenging for our ego. So it wasn't until I finally just let go. Even this is before I even knew I was having any type of kundalini awakening. I just knew that what I was doing was no longer working. Resisting it, trying to constrict, trying to change how I was feeling. I tried every external thing you could imagine to change what was going on inside. Everything. And nothing was working, and I finally had reached, to be very blunt, I had reached a road where I was either done with this physical existence, which I had strongly considered numerous times, or I was going to find a way to heal myself internally. It had reached that point where I literally couldn't go on as I was going anymore. I couldn't do one more second of it. And it was that same day that I made that resolve that I found a site called calmdownmind.com. And if you don't know what calmdownmind.com is, and you're in the early stages of a challenging type of awakening scenario where you're confused, you don't know where to go, I really highly recommend that blog. I read a blog post about how everything is just energy, light and dark energy. And if you're suffering from any type of anxiety, any type of overwhelming fear, any type of depression, just any type of imbalance, that's really what it is. It's just an energetic imbalance. And to come back to balance, what's needed is to release a lot of the suppressed negative energy that we've been unconsciously burying and resisting and trying to avoid, which is exactly what I was doing for those 5 months of the dark night of the soul. So it wasn't until I read that and it told me, it really gave me the best advice. It said, allow it all to arise in its fullest intensity. Allow the energy to come up. Allow the thoughts, the crazy thought patterns to be there. Don't try to push them away either. Just let them be there and let the energy come up. Just don't identify with any of it. Just know it's not you. Just know it's old beliefs, old limitations, old suppressed negativity. It's coming up to be released so that you can start learning more. And actually this energy will start teaching you more about the truth of who you are. Because honestly, you are darkness too, as much as we all want to cling to the light of peace and joy and love, and of course that's our essence. But the darker energy is needed as well, because when we allow the darker energy, that's when we really step into our power of who we are. And that's what gives us the balance of you need the yin and the yang. If you get too much of one or the other, you have an imbalance. And when there's an imbalance, that can show up as all type of symptoms: anxiety, depression, fatigue, listlessness, the anything you're suffering from that feels not so great, that's a sign that you're a little bit out of balance. And all that's really needed is just to allow the energy. When you get out of balance, it's because you're clinging to something. You're clinging to a certain idea. You're clinging to certain emotions. You want the light emotions. You're resisting the dark. No. And that can get you out of balance, and it doesn't feel so good. But if you just allow energy to be, energy by its law of existence, it always comes into balance if it's just not resisted at all. And that's all you really need to know. That's what trust is. Trust is knowing that if you don't resist, and if you just hold space, and if you don't label anything as bad and good, you just are aware of it and you allow it all to run its course. And you allow all the energy just to do what it wants to do inside of you. And you don't make any type of judgments. You don't have any expectations. That's a big one. And you don't really care about the outcome. You just are with it. I mean, that's how you start developing the trust. That's all I got today. I just wanted to share that. I just wrote a blog post about do you trust? It's all about my first in-person meeting with my teacher, and it was a really amazing session. I learned so much from that. We'll make a video about that too, but it got me thinking about when I was first going through the process and how when I didn't trust and I wasn't surrendered and I was resisting, how everything was impossible. I mean, it's just you're never gonna feel good in that state. And when you're clinging to all those things that are being taken from you, your old identities, it's gonna make for the lessons be a lot harder than they probably need to be. And a lot of us need pain and suffering, quite honestly. Pain and suffering are the biggest catalysts for growth. So maybe at a certain point we do need a lot of it, but I just wanted to put this out there if any of you are going through that, and I hope you guys have a great day. Namaste.